Well, good afternoon. Welcome again to another video. Never really know what to say in these things. Sometimes I make these videos in a response, as a response to a question I'll get on an inbox or something, or a comment on a post. But I have been thinking about making a little video of how to use the Traveller's Guide to the Third Dimension, which, if I can reach down here without taking my eyes off the road, is this little book. Now, this little book I give out for free, and if you send me a self-addressed stamped envelope, that's an A5 size booklet, right? Self-addressed stamped envelope, A5 envelope. I'll send you one, or 4 or 10, or however many you want. They're about, I don't know, 100 grams maybe not even. So, but how to use that booklet. So, the reason that you would want to use this booklet is to begin to make an inquiry, perhaps, or begin to make inroads into looking at new ways to think about yourself, spiritual obviously, to think about yourself. And they're not really new ways. I mean, it's the real way of thinking about yourself. And to be able to take on board, let's say, at your own pace and your own leisure, a complete curriculum or a complete thought system. And that little book only has the brief overview, if you want to call it that. It is actually the reviews of the first 50 lessons from A Course in Miracles, but as a whole thing, and with the other bits that I've added into the front, there's a whole overview there of a whole new way to see the world, yourself in it, and everything else. So what happens is, when I respond to things on Facebook and everything, I'll generally do a bit of scrolling, I guess, like everybody does, and I've got a bunch of groups that I'm on there, and people ask questions, you know, and they'll say, well, how this and why that and what about, and that little book answers everything. Like, the whole thing deals with your thinking, deals with your situation, deals with an alternative to your situation, right? And then it leaves it up to you whether you want to apply that or not. So I find it generally very, very helpful. People who are feeling depressed, anxious, suicidal, just down, lonely, like all of that, you know, it gives you something to read. It gives you something to think about. And you always, every time you read that book, even if you read it today and then you read it at the same time next week, you would reflect, and it takes about 40 minutes to read it, 45 minutes. You would reflect back on whatever situations were bothering you based on what you were reading in the book and go, aha. And that's how it works, right? It's really so simple. But you've actually got to, pardon me, hiccups, you've actually got to read it, right? So what I generally tell people is, pick it up in the morning when you've got nothing to do, right? And bear in mind, it's 45 minutes front to back. So you don't need to read front to back. You can just cut to the chase to the reviews of the first 50 lessons, which is sort of halfway through the book, and do that section, and that'll take you about 25 minutes. But do it in the morning and do it again at night before you go to sleep, right? What you're attempting to do is to put into place in your own thinking a bunch of countermeasures, or a bunch of alternative ideas or fresh ideas that you can learn to depend on without having to continually pick up the book, simply because you've read it so many times and you've got the ideas in place. And it's like, all right, this situation, I can apply this, I can do this, right? And that'll begin to have an effect in your life. Now, because that little book's only the reviews of the first 50 lessons of A Course in Miracles, and there are actually 365 lessons, one a day for a whole year, in the big book, which is that thick, I recommend also that if you read that book and you have an affinity with it and you think this is really good, I like what it's saying, even if you don't understand all of it, right? When I first read it, I'm like, I don't get it, whatever. But there was bits that I definitely did get. And as I worked with those bits, the other bits started to like, kick in. So whatever your reactions are to that little book, just use it, right? Read it, use it, whatever. And generally I would say, give it a month, right? Start to use it on a daily basis. Give it a month. Begin to put the principles that you learn from the book into place wherever you can, right? So where you're tempted to step in and want to point the finger at someone, or where you're having an argument and it's one of these repetitive, like, God, we always argue, stop for a second, step back and go, hang on, let me read the book, let me refer to the book. What should I do in this situation? Or how should I really be thinking so that the situation results in a peaceful outcome? All that sort of thing. And begin to put it into practice, right? There's no good having a fishing rod if you don't practice fishing. You've got to get out and use it. So same with psychology, spirituality, or spiritual psychology. It's the same thing, right? It's no good having the book if you don't put it into practice. And most people throughout the day, when you get home, if you were to review your day, you'd probably find there'd be 2 or 3 things that you judged, or a grievance that you had, or somebody said something that upset you, whatever. And you can apply what you learn out of the book to that, right? And it's something that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life, right? Now, I often get people that say, oh, well, it mentions God and this and that and the other, and I'm not interested in religion, right? So it's kind of a tough one, because human beings, we kind of hear things about things and then we go, oh no, that's not for me. And then we just blanket everything with, oh no, that's not for me, right? But I like to look at it this way. There was a time in my life when I didn't believe in God, right? And then I realized at some point, after I came into contact, and this is many years of struggle and drug addiction later, after I came into contact with other ideas about God, just from people and whatever, that it wasn't the idea of God that I didn't believe in, it was the thoughts that I discovered about that idea of God so far in my life, right? And then as I began to look more and more into it, I realized that God is not what religion would have me believe, but God is actually the power of my own mind. God is the all-encompassing presence of life that is within us and all around us, and I started to really gravitate to that, and I thought, yeah, that's really cool. And so I began to see that where if God had this multifaceted universal connection with everyone and everything, and I had a breakdown in that connection with somebody or some situation or something, then all I had to do would be to reconnect, and this is hard to explain, but reconnect with God within myself, in my ideas around that situation, and things would change, right? And I would repair or the activity of God, which is really, if you're a fan of Einstein, nature abhors a vacuum. Where there's a void, where there's a breakdown, where there's a lack, it would just flow in there. God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, would just flow in there and bridge that thing. But it would always be through my willingness to forgive myself for my old ideas, for my old patterns of thinking, for my old judgments and grievances and whatever, in the recognition that in the old days, before I had psychological tools that I could apply, when I was just thinking like I was a victim in the world, in the old days of that, I didn't know how to have positive, good relationships. I didn't know how to be self-aware, and so I taught myself badly to judge against things that were actually presenting me opportunities to grow within myself, right? Or to awaken to the truth that is within myself, right? Which is love, because we all just want love in our relationships, in whatever it looks like, brother to brother, or husband to wife, whatever, Every relationship in my life, there should be no reason, if God is in everything, there should be no reason that I can't connect with that if I put aside my own predetermined ideas of what I think I want the situation to look like in the first place, right? And you got to recognize life's a journey. Why would I judge it? And why would I try to mold it into something I think I want? Why wouldn't I just let it be a miracle Why wouldn't I just accept it as it comes to me and see what the gift is in the accepting of it? Right? And it's like, oh no, well I don't like hot spicy food. Have you ever tried hot spicy food? Well, no, but I know I'm not a fan. I don't like. And these sorts of preconceived, we hear people say, oh, chilies, they fucking burn my mouth. Oh no, I don't want to go there. But, and that's just a very simple example, but you can apply that sort of mentality to anything. It's like I met somebody once that, oh no, I don't want to go overseas because overseas this, that and the other. And it's like, well, have you ever been overseas? And it's like, no, but people tell me, from their experiences, I don't want to go. And it's like, well, that's fine, you don't have to go, but live your own life. Have your own experience, Maybe going overseas isn't for you. Maybe that particular relationship, getting on the plane, going there, coming back, and whatever that entails in between, isn't for you. But that mentality that is closed-minded and not willing to at least say, well, maybe, at least keep the door open. Maybe I will one day. Maybe I'll check it out for myself. Maybe I'll learn a few things from what other people tell me, and I'll just keep an open mind to everything else. So, and that's for everything in life. That's absolutely for everything in life. The world is a classroom, and you can use this little book as a terrific guide to help you learn the lessons that the classroom is going to bring you. And you don't get out of learning. If you were to shut yourself in your house and never went out again, spoke to anyone, whatever, you would still undergo the rigors and the arduous inner turmoil and angst and whatever of the idea of being separate from God, which is where all pain and suffering and death comes from, right? I believe that I'm a body in a world surrounded by other bodies, facing dangers unknown, blah, 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 right? Living in fear, that's not living, right? You're already dead if you're living on your knees. It's like, what's that saying? I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees, I'd rather die a free man for one day than to live on my knees a slave for my whole life. Fear is not your friend. Your ego is not your friend. And when you are willing to look at the shit in your life, why this keeps happening to me, where are all my friends gone, I feel like everybody's there for me when times are good, and and then they run away when I need them, and all of that stuff. But there are lessons in everything, absolutely everything. It's the classroom of life. If you ignore the lessons, it turns into the school of hard knocks. And everybody knows somebody who's got that as their bloody on Facebook. Where were you educated? School of hard knocks. Why would you want to be educated at the school of hard knocks? Why wouldn't you take a step back and ask yourself, all right, why did this happen to me? What's it showing me? What can I learn from this? Rather than hold the grievance and the judgment and want to get back at someone for something. It's like, when you learn to see what happens, the seasons come around, the same days of the week come around, everything comes around again and again and again and again and again, and lessons don't stop until they're learned. And once you learn the lesson that is presented to you in each situation, you can move on to the next one. And each one gets slightly easier because you realize that you had the courage to face the fear that you had in learning the first lesson. And it's like, all right, well, I've done it once. I had to swallow a bit of humble pie there. I had to apologize. I had to do whatever. I can do that again. All right. And then whatever comes around the next time, you do it again. And each time it comes around, and each time you find yourself unhappy or whatever, you pick this up and you read it and you're like, all right, now I can do something about it. Now I can focus on healing me so that my world out there reflects that healing. Peace within, peace out there. Chaos in here, chaos out there. That's how it works. That's it. I'm not talking shit. Try it for yourself. If you walk around as an angry person, you're going to have an angry person experience. I can't make it any simpler than that. All right, well, I love you. Take it easy. And if you want one of those books, whoops, where have I gone? If you want one of those books, just inbox me, let me know, or drop into the shop and pick one up. Peace.